Family wiped their feet on me, but when they found out that I earned a significant amount of money a month, they changed dramatically and asked for money help. But I don't think anyone in my family has ever really seen me. At least not as a person. For as long as I can remember, I've been somewhere between a piece of furniture and a punching bag in this house. I could talk, sure, but nobody listened. They'd cut me off mid-sentence, or just ignore me altogether, as if I were a fly buzzing around the room. It wasn't always like this. I have vague memories of my mother brushing my hair and calling me her little prince when I was a child. I always thought I was the center of her world, but that changed the day Elizabeth was born. I was 9, old enough to see the change in real time. The second she arrived, it was like a spotlight turned on over her and dimmed over me. Elizabeth was everything you wanted in a kid: bright, funny, easygoing. Don't get me wrong, she's my sister and I love her, but it was like she could do no wrong. My parents adored her, spoiled her, hung on her every word. Meanwhile, I was lucky if I got a "How was your day?" That didn't trail off halfway through my answer. By the time I was a teenager, I'd accepted it. I stopped trying to win their attention or affection. It wasn't worth the effort. I just stayed out of the way and figured maybe someday I'd matter again. But that day never came. So when I was 18, I moved out. I didn't make a big scene. I just packed my things, told them I'd found a place, and left. They barely reacted. I think my mother muttered something about calling when I got settled in, but she didn't even look up from her crossword puzzle. Over the years, I built a life for myself. I went into freelance work, then consulting, then finally started my own online business. It took time, but I figured things out. Money wasn't tight anymore. In fact, I was doing really well. Well enough that I could afford to buy a new car, an SUV right off the lot, fully loaded. It was a promise I'd made to myself years ago that when I finally bought my first car, it wouldn't be some beat-up hand-me-down. It would be something new. The funny thing? I didn't even tell them. Not because I was hiding it, but because I'd stopped updating them on my life years ago. Why should I? They didn't seem to care about anything I did. Which brings me to the day I pulled into their driveway. It had been a few weeks since I'd last spoken to them, and my mom had called to ask if I could help with some things around the house. They needed someone to fix a fence or something. I didn't mind. Despite everything, I still felt this strange pull to help them when they asked. Old habits die hard, I guess. When I arrived, their reactions were interesting, to say the least. My dad came out first, and his jaw practically hit the floor when he saw the SUV. My mom followed, and for the first time in as long as I can remember, she looked genuinely surprised to see me. Or maybe it wasn't me, she was surprised that it was the car. And just like that, the energy shifted. As soon as I got out of the car, my mom rushed over, her eyes glued to the SUV. She didn't even say hello at first. "Is this yours?" she asked, as if she couldn't believe it. "Yeah," I said, keeping it casual. My dad walked around the car, whistling to himself. "This is a nice car. Brand new?" "Yep. Picked it up a few weeks ago." Then the questions started flying. How much did it cost? How could I afford it? What was I doing these days? I didn't want to be secretive, but I didn't want to give them my financial breakdown. I just said, "I'm doing fine. I'm making 5 figures a month now." The silence that followed was almost comical. My mom blinked a few times, then said, "5 figures? A month?" "Yeah," I replied. She grabbed my arm and led me inside, telling me I couldn't work on the fence without eating first. My dad followed, talking nonstop about how impressive it was that I'd bought such a car. For the first time in years, I felt like they saw me, but not in the way I'd always wanted. I sat at the kitchen table as my mother piled food in front of me. She'd made an extra plate of something, claiming I needed fuel before work. My dad kept asking about my job. What exactly did I do? How long had I been doing it, and why hadn't I told them before? I kept my answers vague. After fixing the fence and a few other things they needed help with, I said I should probably head back. It was about a 40-mile drive home, and I didn't want to get stuck in traffic. My mom hugged me before I left, which felt strangely out of place. My dad patted me on the back and said something about how proud he was of me. The whole day felt surreal. For the first time in decades, they acted like they cared about me. But deep down, I knew it wasn't about me, it was about the car, the money, the life they never knew I had. The next morning, my phone rang. It was my mom. "Can you come over again today?" she asked. "Why? Is there something else that needs to be fixed?" No, she said quickly. "We just thought it would be nice to have you over for lunch. You know, spend some time together." It was strange, but I agreed. I didn't have much else going on, and I was curious to see what this was all about. When I got there, they were waiting for me at the door. My mom had made a full spread salad, sandwiches, pasta, even dessert. My dad poured me a drink and told me to sit down, that they just wanted to talk. But as soon as the plates were cleared, the real conversation began. After lunch, we were all sitting around the table, and the mood changed. My mom cleared her throat and said, "So we were thinking, since you're doing so well now, maybe you could help out a little." I raised an eyebrow. "Help out with what?" "Well," she began, looking at my dad, "Elizabeth's college tuition has been piling up. She's such a bright girl, and we just want to make sure she can finish school without any stress. You know how it is." My dad chimed in. "And there's the house, so many little things that need fixing. The water heater is on its last legs. And Elizabeth's car, it's really falling apart. She could use something safer, don't you think?" I sat back in my chair and stared at her. This wasn't a conversation, it was a pitch. I hadn't even processed what they were asking when Elizabeth walked into the room. She'd been out, so she had no idea what was going on. "Hey," she said, dropping her bag by the door. "What's everyone talking about? Your brother's doing really well for himself," my mom said with a big smile. "We were just talking about how he might be able to help out with some things around here. You know, lighten the load." Elizabeth's eyes darted to mine, and I could tell she didn't like the way this was going. She wasn't oblivious, she knew how they treated me growing up. I took a deep breath and said, "I get it. You have things you need help with. But let me ask you something, if I showed up in a beat-up old car, would this conversation be happening?" My mom started to protest, but I held up my hand. "I'm serious. If I didn't have this car, if you didn't know how much money I make, would you still want me here for lunch? Would you still want to spend time with me?" The room went quiet. My dad looked at the floor, my mom fumbled with her napkin, and Elizabeth just stood there, awkwardly frozen. Finally, my mother said, "We are your family. Of course we care about you. But families help each other, right?" I shook my head. Help has to go both ways. For years I felt like I didn't exist to you unless you needed something fixed or moved or dealt with. And now, because I make good money, I'm suddenly worth your attention? That doesn't sit right with me. Elizabeth sat down next to me, breaking the tension a little. "He's right, you know. Elizabeth, this is none of your business." My dad snapped. "Doesn't it?" she shot back. "You've been putting him on the back burner since I was born. Now that he's doing well, you expect him to jump in and solve all your problems? That's not fair." After that, the room was dead quiet. My parents looked like they didn't know how to react. I stood up. "I'm not paying for your debts, or a new car, or college tuition. I worked hard to get where I am, and I'm not here to pay for your lifestyle. I'm sorry, but this is my decision." I expected more arguments, but they just sat there, stunned. I grabbed my keys and walked out. Elizabeth followed me to the door. "I'm sorry they're like this," she said quietly. "It's not right." "It is what it is," I replied. "Don't worry about it." But then, as I was walking to my car, my father came running out, looking frantic. "Wait!" he shouted. I stopped, really confused. "I didn't want to bring this up," he said, "but there's something else. Something serious." I braced myself. What is it? He hesitated, then said, We've been getting calls from a debt collector. It's not just Elizabeth's tuition or the house repairs. Your mom and we could lose the house if we don't pay what we owe soon. This was not what I had expected. I turned to look at my mother, who had come to the door but remained silent. For the first time, she looked truly embarrassed. I felt my chest tighten. How bad is it? Bad, he admitted. We're months behind. They're threatening foreclosure. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept replaying my father's words in my head. We could lose the house. As much as I resented them, I didn't like the thought of them being homeless. They were still my parents, no matter how horrible they'd been. The next morning, I called my dad and told him I was coming over to talk. I could tell by the sound of his voice that he was relieved. When I got there, they were already sitting at the kitchen table, waiting for me like I was some kind of financial savior. Elizabeth was there too, sitting off to the side with her arms crossed. She looked like she was preparing for another uncomfortable conversation. I've been thinking about what you told me, I said, sitting down, and I've decided to help. My mother's face lit up, but I held up my hand. I'll pay 30% of what you owe, and no more. The smile disappeared instantly. My father leaned forward. 30%? That's it. Do you have any idea how much we're talking about here? I don't care how much it is, I said. That's my offer. Take it or leave it. My mother sighed dramatically. But you're doing so well now. You could help us out a little more, couldn't you? This is your family. I'll help because you're my family, I said firmly. But I'm not going to put myself in a position where I feel used. 30% is generous, and that's what I'm comfortable with. Before they could argue any further, Elizabeth spoke up. You should be happy that he's willing to help at all. If it were me, I'd tell you to mind your own business. Her words were like a sledgehammer. My parents both turned to look at her, stunned. Excuse me? My mother said, her tone sharp. You heard me, Elizabeth replied. You treated him like crap for years. Now you're lucky he's willing to give you the time of day, let alone money. So maybe stop acting like he owes you and say thank you. I sat there stunned. Elizabeth had never taken my side like this before. She'd always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. But now she was standing up for me in a way I never expected. Elizabeth, this is none of your business, my father said. It is my business when you treat my brother like an ATM. She shot back. I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope in that moment. For so long, I'd assumed that Elizabeth was just like them, oblivious, self-centered, blind to the way they treated me. But maybe she wasn't. Finally, my mother let out a long sigh. Fine, she said, her voice tight. 30%. If that's all you're willing to do, we'll take it. Thank you, I said, standing up. I'll need the details of what you owe so I can figure out my share. Once it's paid, that's it, I won't help again. They nodded, though they didn't look happy about it. When I walked out the door, Elizabeth followed me. Hey, she said. You did the right thing. You don't owe them everything. I smiled. Thanks for saying that in there. I wasn't expecting it. Yeah, well, I don't want to be like them, she said quietly. I hope you know that. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt for my family in a long time, gratitude. As I drove home, I couldn't stop thinking about Elizabeth's words. Maybe she really was different. Maybe, after all, there was still someone in my family who saw me for who I was. The next day, my dad emailed me a breakdown of what they owed. The total wasn't small, it was the kind of number that made you cringe just looking at it. I figured out what 30% would be and sent them a check by the end of the week. True to my word, I didn't ask any questions about how they got into this mess. I didn't want to know. I told myself I was done after that. They could figure out the rest. A few days later I got a call from my mother. She was oddly cheerful, thanking me for the payment and saying it helped a lot. I was polite but kept the conversation short, thinking that was the end of it. It wasn't. The following week my father called. He started off casually, asking how I was doing and if I'd been busy with work. Then he dropped it. You know, we've been thinking about the future. With everything that's been going on, it might be nice to have a little cushion, just in case. You know, for emergencies. I pinched the bridge of my nose, already annoyed. Dad, I told you, I'm not helping you beyond what I've already given you. Oh, I know, he said quickly. It's just, we're still struggling a bit. And Elizabeth's car dash. I cut him off. No. I was helping with the house. That's all. There was a pause, and then he sighed. All right. I get it. Except he didn't, because 2 days later my mom called, and the conversation went almost exactly the same way. It was exhausting. I also had to remind her that I wasn't a bottomless bank account. But the real kicker came when Elizabeth called me later that night. Hey, she said. I just wanted to warn you they're not letting this go. They keep talking about how they're going to convince you to help more. Seriously? I said, annoyed. I've already given them more than enough. I know, she said. But they're stubborn. It's like they think if they push hard enough, you'll give in. That set me off. What do they expect me to do? Pay off all my debts? Buy a new car? I'm already working my ass off to live my own life. Elizabeth hesitated. If you asked me, I don't think you should give them anything else. They need to learn to deal with their own mess. But what? I asked. They've talked about selling the house. And when they do, they'll expect you to help them find a new place. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They're already planning their next move? Unbelievable. Elizabeth sighed. Yeah. I hate it. But I just thought you should know. Hearing her side of the story again took me by surprise. I didn't know what was more surprising, that my sister, who had been the golden child all her life, was on my side, or that my parents had no shame in doubling down. Thanks for the warning, I said. I appreciate it. Of course, she said. And I know it probably doesn't mean much, but I'm really sorry they're like this. They don't deserve it. I didn't know how to respond, so I just said, thank you. After we hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. I thought about the years of neglect, the way they'd only come to me when they needed something. And now, even after I'd done more than I was comfortable with, they were still scheming. I realized something then. This wasn't about helping them. It was about control. The moment they saw I had money, they decided I was their ticket to an easier life. And no matter how much I gave, it would never be enough. But as angry as I was, there was one bright spot, Elizabeth. She was different. She saw through them, and she didn't try to sugarcoat it. For the first time, I felt like I had an ally. Still, I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. A few days after Elizabeth's warning, I received another call from my father. This time he didn't even bother with small talk. We've decided to sell the house, he said. It's the only way to pay off the debt. But there's a problem. I sighed. What's the problem? Well, he began. We've been looking at smaller houses in the area, but the down payments are high. And since you're doing so well... Stop, I interrupted. We've had this conversation before. I helped with what I could give. That was it. I'm not paying for a new house, and I'm not giving you any more money. My father tried to argue, but I wouldn't have it. You need to stop treating me like the solution to your problems. I'm not. Figure it out. I hung up on him before he could say anything else. I was furious, but at the same time I felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in my life, I was completely on my own, without guilt. That night, Elizabeth called. I heard about the house, she said. Mom and Dad are freaking out. Of course they are, I replied. They're mad because they can't manipulate me anymore. She was quiet for a moment, then said, I think it's good that you're standing up for yourself. They need to figure this out for themselves. Thanks, I said. Honestly, I'm just glad you're not like them. She laughed softly. I try not to be, I'm sorry it took me so long to really see what they put you through. It's not your fault, I said. You didn't ask to be the favorite. We talked for a while, longer than we ever had before. It felt natural, like we were finally connecting as siblings instead of strangers living in the same family. The next day my mom called, but I let it go to voicemail. I knew what she wanted, and I wasn't interested in hearing it. When I finally listened to the message, it was what I expected, another plea for help, laced with guilt and disappointment. I deleted it without answering. Over the next few weeks, my parents' calls slowed down. It was clear they realized I wasn't going to budge. And as much as it hurt to admit it, the distance made me feel better. The surprise came when Elizabeth began calling me regularly. Sometimes it was just to chat, other times to ask for advice or to tell me about her day. She never mentioned money or asked for anything. She just wanted to talk. One night, after a long conversation about her classes and her plans for the future, she said, "I don't know what's going to happen with Mom and Dad, but I want you to know that I'm always here for you. You have me, okay?" It took me by surprise, but I managed to say, "Thank you, Liz. That means a lot." And it did. My parents eventually sold the house, moved to a smaller place, and found ways to make ends meet. They stopped calling as much, except occasionally for the obligatory holiday or birthday greeting. Things went back to the way they'd always been, distant, cold, transactional. But with Elizabeth it was different. We talked all the time now, and for the first time I felt like I actually had a sibling. She didn't see me as a wallet or a fixer, she just saw me as her brother. I'd always thought my family was a lost cause, and maybe some of it still is. But Elizabeth? She was the unexpected bright spot in all of this. And I'm grateful for that. In the end, nothing really changed with my parents. But with my sister? Everything did. And that's enough for me.